The dust hadn't even settled from her father's wagon when Eleanor Lawrence realized she would never see her family again. Standing alone on the edge of San Andreas, California, with nothing but the dress on her back and a fury that burned hotter than the afternoon sun. It was July 1878, and the gold rush might have faded, but the town still thrived with ranchers, miners, and men who believed a woman's worth was measured by her obedience. Eleanor had just turned 22, and for the past 3 months her father had insisted she marry Gerald Pemberton, a wealthy banker twice her age with hands that felt like cold fish and a smile that never reached his eyes. She had said no 17 times. This morning, when she said it for the 18th, her father told her to pack her things. Except he hadn't let her pack anything. He had driven her to the edge of town in silence, his face carved from stone, while her mother wept quietly in the house they left behind. Her 2 younger sisters hadn't even been allowed to say goodbye. The wagon had stopped at the boundary where San Andreas met the open range, and her father had spoken his final words to her with a voice devoid of feeling. "You are no longer my daughter. You have shamed this family, and I will not watch you destroy our good name with your stubbornness. Gerald Pemberton was willing to overlook your willful nature. No other decent man will." Then he had turned the wagon around, leaving her standing in the road with the clothes she wore and $5 she had hidden in her boot. Eleanor watched the wagon disappear, and she did not cry. She had cried all her tears the night before. Now there was only the practical matter of survival. She turned toward San Andreas, its buildings shimmering in the heat, and began walking. The main street was busy with afternoon commerce when she arrived, men loading supplies onto wagons, women hurrying between the general store and the dressmaker, children chasing each other around barrels and posts. Eleanor kept her head high, though she felt every eye on her. In a town this size, everyone knew everyone's business. They would know by now that Albert Lawrence had cast out his eldest daughter. They would know why. The Dusty Rose Saloon stood on the corner of Main and 3rd, its painted sign faded but still legible. Eleanor had never been inside a saloon in her life, but she had heard that Miss Carlotta, the woman who ran it, was fair and sometimes hired women to serve drinks and food. It was not respectable work by her father's standards, but her father's standards no longer applied to her life. She pushed through the swinging doors. Inside, the saloon was dimmer and smelled of tobacco, whiskey, and sawdust. A long bar ran along one wall, tables scattered throughout the room. A piano stood silent in the corner. It was the quiet hour between lunch and dinner, and only a few patrons sat nursing drinks. Behind the bar, a woman with black hair piled high and a dress of deep purple looked up. "Miss Carlotta," Eleanor guessed. "We do not open for dinner for another hour," Carlotta said, her voice accented with something European that Eleanor couldn't place. "I am not here for dinner," Eleanor said, walking forward with more confidence than she felt. "I am here for work. I heard you sometimes hire women to serve." Carlotta's eyes, dark and sharp, traveled over Eleanor from head to toe. "You are Albert Lawrence's daughter." "I was." Eleanor met her gaze steadily. "Now I am just Eleanor, and I need work. Your father cast you out for refusing marriage to Gerald Pemberton." It was not a question. Carlotta leaned against the bar, considering. "That man has hands like a dead fish." Despite everything, Eleanor felt a small smile tug at her lips. "Exactly like a dead fish." Carlotta laughed, a rich sound that filled the empty saloon. "I like you. Yes, you can work here. Serving food and drinks only. Any man who tries more than looking will answer to me. I pay $3 a week plus meals and a room upstairs. It is small, but it is yours. Do we have an agreement? $3 a week. It was not much, but with room and meals included, it was survival. Eleanor nodded. We have an agreement. Good. Your first shift starts in 1 hour. Go upstairs, third door on the right. There is a blue dress in the wardrobe that should fit you. Wash your face, fix your hair, and come back down. I will teach you what you need to know. Eleanor climbed the narrow stairs to find a small room with a bed, a wardrobe, a washstand, and a window overlooking the back alley. It was sparse and plain, but it was hers, and that mattered more than she could express. She found the blue dress, simpler than what she was wearing but cleaner and more practical for work. As she changed, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the washstand. Her face was dusty from the road, her brown hair coming loose from its pins, her green eyes rimmed with red from the tears she had shed in private. But her jaw was set, her spine straight. She had refused to break for her father, and she would not break now. The evening shift passed in a blur of learning. Carlotta showed her how to balance multiple plates, how to pour whiskey without spilling, how to deflect unwanted attention with a smile and a firm word. The men who came in for dinner were mostly respectful, though Eleanor felt their curious stares. By the time the saloon closed near midnight, her feet ached and her arms felt like lead, but she had made it through her first day. She slept deeply and woke to sunlight streaming through her window. Sunday morning. The saloon would be quiet until afternoon. Eleanor dressed in her own clothes again, now brushed clean of dust, and ventured out to explore San Andreas with fresh eyes. It was strange to walk through town knowing she was no longer Albert Lawrence's daughter but simply Eleanor, saloon girl. Some people nodded to her. Others looked away. She held her head high regardless. The general store was busy with after-church shoppers when she stopped in to buy a few necessities with her $5. She was examining a bar of lavender soap when she heard a familiar voice. Eleanor Lawrence, I heard what your father did. She turned to find Margaret Cooper, who had been her friend since childhood, standing with her mother. Mrs. Cooper's face was pinched with disapproval, but Margaret looked sympathetic. It is just Eleanor now, she said quietly. Your father did what he thought was right, Mrs. Cooper said, her voice carrying through the store. A daughter who will not obey brings shame upon her whole family. You should have married Mr. Pemberton and counted yourself fortunate. Eleanor felt heat rise in her chest. Mr. Pemberton is 47 years old and has buried 2 wives already. I would not be fortunate. I would be the third. That is a wicked thing to suggest, Mrs. Cooper snapped. Those poor women died of natural causes. Both in childbirth, bearing children for a man who wanted sons more than he wanted partners. Eleanor's voice was steady, though her hands shook. I chose myself over that fate. I would make the same choice again. Mrs. Cooper grabbed Margaret's arm and pulled her away. Margaret glanced back once, her eyes apologetic, but she did not resist her mother. Eleanor paid for her soap and a few other items, then left the store. She told herself it did not hurt that Margaret had not defended her, but it did. It hurt terribly. She was walking back toward the saloon when she nearly collided with a man coming out of the livery stable. He caught her arm to steady her, then immediately released it and stepped back. I apologize, miss. I was not watching where I was going. Eleanor looked up at him, then up further. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean build of a man who worked hard for his living. His hair was dark brown and needed a cut, curling at his collar, and his eyes were an unusual shade of gray-blue. He wore dusty work clothes and a hat pushed back on his head, and there was something about his face that was open and honest. He looked to be in his mid-20s. It was my fault as well, Eleanor said. I was not paying attention. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Well, then we are both guilty. I am Isaac Ollinger. I work on the Running Creek Ranch about 10 miles north of here. Eleanor Lawrence. She paused. Just Eleanor, actually. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition or understanding, but he did not comment on it. Well, just Eleanor, it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, even under such clumsy circumstances. Are you new to San Andreas? I have lived here all my life, but I am new to certain parts of it. She was not sure why she was telling him this. Perhaps because he had kind eyes and had not looked at her with judgment. I see. Isaac shifted his weight, and she noticed he was holding a bridle he had apparently just purchased. I do not come into town often, so I do not know many people. But if you ever need anything, Running Creek Ranch is easy to find. Just follow the north road until you see the gate with the creek stone arch. It was an odd thing to offer to a woman he had just met, but Eleanor found herself believing he meant it. Thank you. That is kind of you. Just neighborly. He tipped his hat to her. I hope to see you again, just Eleanor. She watched him walk to his horse, mount up with easy grace, and ride north out of town. Then she continued back to the saloon, thinking about gray-blue eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. The next weeks fell into a pattern. Eleanor worked 6 evenings a week at the Dusty Rose, learning the rhythms of the saloon and the personalities of the regular customers. Carlotta was a fair employer and a fierce protector. When a drunk miner tried to grab Eleanor's waist her second week, Carlotta had him thrown into the street by the bartender, a giant named Samuel who was gentle as a lamb until someone crossed a line. Eleanor grew more confident in her work, her steps quicker, her hands steadier. She was good at remembering orders and faces. The tips helped supplement her small salary. On her day off each week, she explored San Andreas and the surrounding area. She walked to the edge of town where the ranch lands began, watched the cattle drives pass through, sat by the creek that gave Running Creek Ranch its name. She did not see Isaac Ollinger again, though she found herself looking for him without meaning to. It was late August when he came into the Dusty Rose. Eleanor was serving dinner to a table of card players when she looked up and saw him standing just inside the doors, looking around as if unsure he was in the right place. Their eyes met across the room, and his face lit up with recognition. He wove through the tables to where she stood. Just Eleanor, he said, smiling that smile that made his whole face change. So this is where you landed. This is where I work, she confirmed, balancing her tray. Are you here for dinner? I am. One of the ranch hands told me the steak here is the best in the county. It is very good, Eleanor agreed. Sit anywhere, and I will bring you a menu. She was aware of him watching her as she moved through the saloon. When she brought him the handwritten menu, he ordered the steak without looking at it. How long have you been working here? He asked. About 6 weeks now. Eleanor glanced around, making sure her other tables did not need anything. It is good work. Your family, Isaac said carefully. Are they well? Eleanor stiffened. I would not know. We do not speak anymore. I am sorry. I heard some talk in town. That is why you said just Eleanor when we met. His eyes were sympathetic but not pitying. For what it is worth, I think you showed courage. She looked at him sharply. You know what happened. I know you refused to marry a man you did not want, and your father cast you out for it. Isaac leaned back in his chair. I know men like Gerald Pemberton. Money and position do not make a man good. You were right to refuse. Eleanor felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. Most people believe I should have obeyed my father. Most people do not have to live the life you would have lived. Isaac's voice was quiet but firm. I believe every person has the right to choose their own path, even if others disagree with that choice. She wanted to say more, but another table was calling for service. I need to get your order to the kitchen. Throughout the evening, she found herself drifting back to Isaac's table more than strictly necessary. He ate slowly, watching the life of the saloon with interest. When she refilled his coffee, he asked her about San Andreas, about where she had grown up, about what she liked to do when she was not working. She found herself answering more openly than she had with anyone since her exile. There was something about Isaac Ollinger that made conversation easy. When he finally paid his bill, leaving a generous tip, he stood and put his hat back on. "I come to town once a month for supplies. Would it be acceptable if I stopped by for dinner again?" "Anyone can come here for dinner," Eleanor said, keeping her voice neutral though her heart beat faster. "It is a public establishment." "That is not quite what I asked." Isaac met her eyes. "I am asking if you would mind if I came specifically to see you." Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks. No man had ever been so direct with her, so honest about his intentions. "I would not mind." His smile was like sunrise. "Then I will see you next month, just Eleanor." September arrived with cooler nights and the first hints of autumn color in the trees. Eleanor had settled into her new life with a resilience that surprised her. She had not seen her family at all, though she occasionally glimpsed her sisters in town with her mother. They never looked her way. The pain of that rejection had dulled to a constant ache she learned to carry. Isaac came to the saloon on the last Friday of September, just as he had promised. He arrived at dinner time, sat at the same table, ordered steak again, and talked with Eleanor whenever she had a free moment. This time, when he left, he asked if she ever walked by Running Creek. "Sometimes on my day off," she admitted. "The creek runs through the north pasture. If you follow it upstream about a mile, there is a spot with cottonwood trees where the water pools. It is peaceful there. If you ever want to see it, I could show you." He paused. "As friends. No expectations. I just think you might like it." Eleanor knew she should probably say no. A proper young woman did not go walking alone with a man, but she was no longer a proper young woman by society's standards. She had been cast out, and she was making her own rules now. "I have Monday off," she said. "Monday afternoon, then. I will meet you where the north road crosses the creek." "Around 2 o'clock, Eleanor nodded, and Isaac left looking pleased. Carlotta, who saw everything that happened in her saloon, gave Eleanor a knowing look but said nothing. Monday was warm and clear, the sky that deep blue that only came in early autumn. Eleanor wore her simplest dress and walking boots, and she braided her hair down her back. She walked the north road with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. What was she doing? She barely knew Isaac Ollinger, but he had been kind to her when others had not. He had treated her with respect when she expected judgment. And there was something about his eyes, his smile, the way he listened when she spoke, that made her want to know him better. He was waiting at the creek crossing, his horse tied to a fence post nearby. When he saw her, he came forward with that open smile. "You came. I said I would. People do not always do what they say." Isaac gestured upstream. "It is about a mile walk. The path is easy. Do you mind walking?" They followed the creek through ranch land, the water burbling over smooth stones, grasshoppers jumping out of their way. Isaac pointed out landmarks, told her about the ranch where he worked, explained that he had been there for 3 years, working his way up from general hand to the foreman's right hand. He had dreams of saving enough to buy his own land someday, maybe a small ranch where he could raise horses. "I have always loved horses," he said. "They are honest creatures. They do not pretend to be something they are not." "Unlike people," Eleanor observed. "Unlike some people," Isaac agreed, "but not all. Some people are exactly who they appear to be. And which are you?" He glanced at her, those gray-blue eyes thoughtful. "I am trying to be the kind of man who keeps his word and treats others fairly. Whether I succeed is for others to judge." They reached the spot he had described, a widening in the creek where cottonwood trees spread their branches overhead, their leaves already turning gold. The water pooled here, clear and deep, reflecting the sky. A fallen log made a natural bench near the water's edge. It was indeed peaceful, removed from town and ranch, a pocket of tranquility. They sat on the log, and for a while they simply watched the water. Then Isaac spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask." "Do you regret it, refusing the marriage knowing what it would cost?" Eleanor considered the question seriously. "I regret that my family chose money and reputation over me. I regret that my sisters are learning that obedience matters more than happiness. But do I regret refusing Gerald Pemberton?" She shook her head. "No. I would have died slowly in that marriage, piece by piece. At least this way I am still myself." "You are brave," Isaac said quietly. "I am stubborn," Eleanor corrected. "There is a difference. I think courage and stubbornness often go together." He picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water, sending ripples across the surface. "My parents died when I was 16. Fever took them both within a week of each other. I had a choice then. I could try to keep the farm going, or I could sell it and find other work. Everyone said I should keep the farm, that it was what my parents would have wanted. But you sold it." "I sold it because I knew I could not work that land alone, and I did not want to be tied to one place yet. I wanted to learn, to see what else was out there. Some people said I dishonored my parents' memory." He looked at her. "But I think they would have wanted me to choose my own path, even if it was different from theirs. So we are both people who chose ourselves over others' expectations," Eleanor said. "I suppose we are." Isaac smiled. "Maybe that is why I feel like I can talk to you. You understand what it costs to make that choice." They talked for hours by the creek, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Isaac told her about his travels before settling in San Andreas, the ranches he had worked, the people he had met. Eleanor told him about growing up in a family that valued appearance over substance, about her love of reading, and how her father had thought it a waste of time for a woman. They discovered they were both 22, both born in the spring, both fond of early mornings and coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. The sun was lowering toward the western hills when Isaac finally said they should head back. He walked her to the edge of town, stopping before they would be easily visible to curious eyes. "Could we do this again?" he asked. "I would like to spend more time with you, Eleanor, not just Eleanor, just Eleanor." She smiled at the play on words. "I would like that too." "Next Monday, same time?" "Yes." The pattern repeated through September into October. Isaac came to the saloon for dinner once a week, and every Monday afternoon they met at the creek crossing and walked together. Sometimes they returned to the cottonwood pool. Other times they explored different paths, following the creek in other directions, climbing to high points where they could see the valley spread below. They talked endlessly, learning each other's stories, hopes, fears, dreams. Isaac was easy to be with, never demanding more than she wanted to give, always respectful but increasingly warm. It was the third Monday in October when Eleanor realized she was falling in love with him. They were sitting by the creek, his coat spread on the ground because the weather had turned cooler. Isaac was telling her a story about a horse he had trained, his hands moving to illustrate, his face animated. The afternoon sun caught the gold in his brown hair, and he laughed at something in his own story, and Eleanor felt her heart turn over in her chest. This man, she thought. This good, honest, kind man. He must have seen something in her face because he stopped mid-sentence. "What is it?" "Nothing." "Everything?" She shook her head, unable to find words. Isaac reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused from work, warm and solid. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something." Her heart beat faster. "All right." I did not come to San Andreas by accident that day in July. I mean, I did need supplies, but I had heard talk at the ranch about Eleanor Lawrence casting out his daughter for refusing marriage, and something about that story stayed with me. A woman brave enough to choose herself over comfort. He squeezed her hand gently. When I met you outside the livery and you said just Eleanor, I knew who you were, and I wanted to know you better. So all of this, Eleanor gestured between them, was planned. The first meeting was luck. Everything after was choice. Isaac's eyes were serious. I am choosing you, Eleanor. I have been choosing you every time I come to town, every time I meet you here, and I will keep choosing you for as long as you will let me. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not sad tears. Isaac, wait. He held up his free hand. Before you say anything, I need to say this properly. I know you were cast out for refusing one proposal. I will not be another man trying to tell you what to do or who to be, so I am not asking you to marry me. Not now. Not until you are ready. Not unless you want to. He took a breath. What I am asking is if you will let me court you properly. Let me take you to dinner somewhere other than the saloon. Let me introduce you to my friends. Let the whole town see that I am proud to be with you. The whole town already thinks I am fallen, Eleanor said softly. Being seen with me will not help your reputation. I do not care about that kind of reputation. Isaac's voice was fierce. I care about being with someone who makes me want to be better, someone who is brave and honest and kind, someone who would rather face exile than live a lie. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. I care about you, Eleanor Lawrence, and if you will have me, I would like to court you properly. Eleanor felt something break open inside her, a wall she had built around her heart crumbling. Yes, she said. Yes, I will let you court me. Isaac's smile was brilliant. Then he grew serious again. There is one more thing. I know you said you would refuse me if you wanted to. I meant what I said. At any point, if you want to stop this, if you want to refuse me, you can. No consequences, no anger. You will still have my friendship and my respect. You understand? I understand. Eleanor felt her own smile growing. But I do not think I will want to refuse you. Good, Isaac said. And then he was pulling her closer, and she was leaning in. And they kissed for the first time with the creek singing beside them and the cottonwood leaves falling around them like gold coins. Courting Isaac Ollinger was different from anything Eleanor had experienced with the few beaux she had entertained before her father's demands about Gerald Pemberton. Isaac was attentive without being possessive, affectionate without being improper, interested in her thoughts and opinions on everything from ranch management to politics. He took her to dinner at the hotel restaurant, where the food was not as good as the Dusty Rose, but the setting was more formal. He borrowed a wagon and drove her out to see the autumn colors in the hills. He brought her books from the small library at the ranch, knowing she missed having things to read. The town noticed, of course. San Andreas was too small for anything to go unnoticed. Eleanor heard the whispers, saw the looks. Some people seemed scandalized that Isaac would court a woman who had been cast out. Others seemed pleased that Eleanor had found someone despite her father's condemnation. A few seemed genuinely happy for them. Gerald Pemberton made his displeasure known one evening in late October. He came into the Dusty Rose while Eleanor was working, sat at one of her tables, and ordered whiskey. When she brought it, he caught her wrist. I heard you have taken up with some ranch hand, he said, his voice oily. I hope you know what you are doing, girl. Men like that do not marry girls like you. They use you and leave you. Eleanor pulled her wrist free. Men like that are honest about their intentions. They do not try to purchase women young enough to be their daughters. Pemberton's face flushed with anger. You insolent little, is there a problem here? Isaac's voice cut across the saloon. He had just come in and crossed the room in several long strides. He stood beside Eleanor, not touching her, but his presence a clear statement. "No problem," Pemberton said after a long moment. "Just offering friendly advice." "She does not need your advice," Isaac said flatly. "Or your company. Finish your drink and leave." For a moment, Eleanor thought Pemberton might argue. Then he tossed back his whiskey, threw some coins on the table, and left. The saloon slowly returned to its normal buzz of conversation. "Thank you," Eleanor said quietly, "though I had it handled." "I know you did," Isaac said, "but I wanted him to know you were not alone." That was Isaac in a nutshell, Eleanor thought. Not trying to fight her battles for her, but standing beside her so she did not have to face them alone. November brought colder weather and the first frost. Eleanor and Isaac continued their Monday meetings, now bundled in coats and scarves. They also spent more time in town together, Isaac frequently staying the night at the boarding house so he could escort Eleanor to church on Sunday mornings. This caused another small scandal, but Reverend Matthews welcomed them both, and his wife, a kind woman named Judith, made a point of speaking to Eleanor after services. It was the second Sunday in November when Eleanor saw her mother. The older woman was leaving church with Eleanor's two sisters, and their paths intersected on the steps. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Eleanor saw how her mother had aged in the past few months, new lines around her eyes and mouth. Her mother saw how Eleanor stood straight and unashamed, Isaac's hand resting lightly on her back. "Mother," Eleanor said quietly, "Eleanor." Her mother's voice was strained. Then she looked at Isaac. "Is this the young man I have heard about?" "This is Isaac Ollinger," Eleanor said. "Isaac, this is my mother, Mary Lawrence, and my sisters, Sophie and Grace." Isaac tipped his hat. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Lawrence." Mary Lawrence studied him for a long moment. "You are courting my daughter." "With her permission, yes, madam. You know she was cast out. That she has no dowry, no prospects." "I know she is brave and honest and kind," Isaac said calmly. "Those matter more to me than dowries." Something shifted in Mary Lawrence's expression. She looked at Eleanor again. "You seem well." "I am," Eleanor said. "I am very well." Her mother nodded slowly. Then she glanced around, clearly aware they were being watched. "Your father has not changed his mind." "I did not expect him to." "But Mary Lawrence stopped, swallowed. "I miss you, Eleanor. So do your sisters." Sophie and Grace, who had been silent, both nodded. Grace, the younger at 16, looked near tears. "I miss you too," Eleanor said honestly. "All of you." "Perhaps," Mary said carefully, "you might come to tea sometime, when your father is at his office, just for an hour." It was not a full reconciliation, it was not acceptance. But it was something, a crack in the wall. Eleanor felt tears threaten. "I would like that." "Thursday afternoons. He is always at the bank until 5. Mary reached out as if to touch Eleanor's hand, then pulled back. "Come through the back door." Then she gathered her daughters and left. Eleanor stood on the church steps, shaking slightly. Isaac's arm came around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" "I think so," Eleanor said. "I did not expect that." "Family is complicated," Isaac said, "but love finds a way even through walls." Eleanor went to tea that Thursday and every Thursday after that through November and into December. It was awkward at first, her mother and sisters not quite knowing what to say, Eleanor careful not to mention the saloon or her life now. But gradually, they found their way back to each other. Sophie, 18 and sharp-witted, confessed she had been furious with their father for casting Eleanor out. Grace, softer and more emotional, simply hugged Eleanor and cried the second week. Mary said little about her own feelings, but she always made Eleanor's favorite pastries and asked careful questions about Isaac. Eleanor did not see her father. She did not try. That bridge, if it would ever be rebuilt, would take much more time. December brought the town's Christmas preparations. the dusty rose decorated with pine boughs and ribbon, and Carlotta allowed Eleanor to hang a wreath on her room door. Isaac came to town more frequently as the holiday approached, and on the afternoon of December 20th, he took Eleanor back to their cottonwood pool by the creek. The trees were bare now, the water cold, ice forming at the edges. Isaac had brought a thick blanket and they sat wrapped in it together, watching the winter sun slant through the branches. He had been quieter than usual during the walk, and Eleanor sensed something was coming. "I need to tell you something," Isaac said finally. "The ranch foreman is retiring in the spring. The owner has offered me his position." Eleanor's heart leaped. "Isaac, that is wonderful. You have worked so hard for this." "It comes with a house," Isaac continued. "Small, just 4 rooms, but solid, and a higher salary. Enough to support." He stopped, then started again. "Eleanor, I know I said I would not ask until you were ready, and if you are not ready, that is fine. We can keep courting for as long as you need." "But I am hoping I am asking." He turned to face her fully. "Will you marry me?" Eleanor's breath caught. She had known this was coming, had felt them moving toward this moment for weeks, but hearing the actual words still sent her heart racing. "I love you," Isaac said, his gray-blue eyes intense. "I love your courage and your stubborn streak, and the way you laugh when something truly delights you. I love that you choose yourself and your own truth over comfort and lies. I want to build a life with you, but only if you want that too. And if you do not, if you want to refuse me, that is your right. I meant what I said. Refuse me if you want." Eleanor reached up and touched his face, feeling the slight roughness of his jaw. "I do not want to refuse you," she said softly. "I want to say yes. I want to marry you, Isaac Ollinger, and build a life with you, and choose you every day the way you have chosen me." The joy that lit his face was like watching sunrise. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold band with a small garnet, red as wine. "It was my mother's," he said. "The only thing I kept when I sold the farm. I always thought I would give it to the woman I married if I was lucky enough to find someone I loved that much." Eleanor let him slip the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then they were kissing, cold forgotten, wrapped in the blanket and each other, promising everything with touch and breath. They were married on January 15th, 1879, in the small church in San Andreas. Carlotta closed the dusty rose for the afternoon so everyone could attend. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony, his wife playing the organ. Eleanor wore a simple cream-colored dress that Carlotta had helped her make, and Isaac wore a new suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. Samuel from the saloon stood up as Isaac's best man, and Carlotta served as Eleanor's matron of honor. Eleanor's mother and sisters came to the wedding, sitting in the back pew. Her father did not come. Eleanor tried not to let that hurt dampen her joy, and mostly she succeeded. Isaac's friends from the ranch filled several pews, and a surprising number of townspeople attended as well. Perhaps they had come from curiosity, but Eleanor chose to believe at least some came from goodwill. When Isaac said his vows, his voice was steady and clear. When Eleanor said hers, she met his eyes and meant every word. They sealed their promises with a kiss, and the church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the Dusty Rose, which Carlotta had transformed with flowers and streamers. There was food and dancing and toasts. Eleanor danced with Isaac, with Samuel, with several of the ranch hands. She even danced with Reverend Matthews, who was surprisingly light on his feet. Near the end of the evening, her mother approached her. "You look happy," Mary said. "I am," Eleanor replied. "Very happy." Her mother reached out and squeezed her hand. "I am glad. I am sorry for everything. I should have fought harder for you." "You are here now," Eleanor said. "That matters." "Your father may never accept this," Mary warned, "but I will not lose my daughter again. Come to tea whenever you want. Bring your husband. Sophie and Grace want to know him better. It was not everything, but it was enough. Eleanor hugged her mother, and Mary held her tight for a long moment before pulling away and leaving with Eleanor's sisters, who both hugged her as well and whispered their congratulations. Isaac had secured a wagon for the evening, and after the reception wound down, he drove them to the ranch. The foreman's house was small, as Isaac had said, but it was clean and well built, with a bedroom, a small parlor, a kitchen, and a spare room. Isaac had furnished it simply, and Eleanor saw touches that showed he had been preparing for her arrival. Curtains in the windows, a quilt on the bed, a rocking chair in the parlor that he sheepishly admitted he had built himself. "It is perfect," Eleanor said, turning in a slow circle in the parlor. "It is home." That night in the small bedroom they came together as husband and wife, and Eleanor marveled at how right it felt, how natural to be with someone who loved her for exactly who she was. Isaac was gentle and patient, and when they lay tangled together afterward, Eleanor felt a peace she had never known. "No regrets," Isaac murmured into her hair. "Not a single one," Eleanor replied. The winter passed into spring, and Eleanor settled into her new life as a ranch wife. It was different from anything she had known. The work was hard, cooking and cleaning and helping with the ranch when needed. But it was hers, chosen freely, and that made all the difference. She learned to manage the household, to preserve food, to tend a garden. Isaac taught her to ride, and she discovered a love of horses that matched his own. They spent evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other or simply talking, planning their future. In March, Eleanor realized she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully. He went very still, then swept her into his arms and spun her around the kitchen, laughing. "We are going to be parents," he said, wonder in his voice. "You are going to be a mother." "And you are going to be a father," Eleanor said, grinning. "Are you ready for that?" "I have no idea," Isaac admitted. "But I will learn. We will learn together." Their son was born in early November, a healthy baby with a strong cry and his father's gray-blue eyes. They named him James, after Isaac's father. Eleanor's mother and sisters came to visit, bringing gifts and help. Mary held her grandson and cried happy tears, and Eleanor forgave her mother completely in that moment. Sophie and Grace were delighted to be aunts and vied for who could hold James more. Eleanor's father still did not come, still did not acknowledge her. But Eleanor found she could live with that. She had Isaac, she had her son, she had her mother and sisters back in her life. She had a home she loved and work that gave her purpose. She had chosen herself, and in doing so, she had found everything she needed. Isaac proved to be a devoted father, rising in the night to help with James, changing diapers without complaint, rocking the baby to sleep while singing off-key lullabies. He had become foreman as planned, and the ranch prospered under his leadership. They began saving money toward buying their own land, their shared dream. The years unfolded gently. James grew into a sturdy toddler with his mother's curiosity and his father's easy nature. When he was 2, Eleanor gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Rose, who filled the house with chaos and joy. Isaac built an addition onto the house to accommodate their growing family, adding 2 bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. Eleanor's relationship with her mother and sisters deepened. Sophie married a young lawyer and moved to Sacramento, but she visited often. Grace, who had her sister Eleanor's stubborn streak, announced at 19 that she would not marry until she found someone she genuinely loved, and her parents, chastened by Eleanor's example, did not push her. Mary became a fixture at Eleanor's house, helping with the children, sharing meals, slowly rebuilding what had been broken. In 1884, when James was 5 and the twins were 3, Albert Lawrence suffered a stroke. Mary sent word, and Eleanor drove into town to the house she had grown up in. Her father was in bed, half his face frozen, his speech slurred. When he saw her, tears leaked from his eyes. "I am sorry," he managed to say, the words thick and difficult. "So sorry." Eleanor sat beside his bed and took his hand. She did not say it was all right, because it was not. But she said, "I forgive you," and she meant it. Not for his sake, but for her own, because carrying anger had grown too heavy. He died a week later. At the funeral, Eleanor stood with Isaac on one side and her mother on the other, and she grieved not for what had been, but for what might have been if her father had chosen love over pride. With her father gone, Mary sold the house in town and moved to a small cottage on the Running Creek Ranch property, close to Eleanor and Isaac. She became grandmother to their children, and Eleanor treasured having her mother near. The relationship healed even if the scars remained. In 1886, Isaac's hard work and careful saving paid off. They purchased 200 acres adjacent to Running Creek Ranch, land with good water and grazing. They built their own ranch house, larger than the foreman's cottage, with room for their growing family. Isaac started breeding horses, combining his position as foreman with his own growing enterprise. Eleanor managed the household and the books, discovering she had a head for numbers and business. Their ranch, which they named Cottonwood Creek after the place where Isaac had first told Eleanor he wanted to court her, prospered. They hired hands to help with the work. They raised horses and cattle. James, as he grew, showed his father's gift with animals. The twins were bright and fearless, climbing trees and riding almost before they could walk properly. In 1888, Eleanor gave birth to another son, Daniel, and in 1890, their last child, a daughter they named Mary after Eleanor's mother. Their house was full of noise and love and laughter. Isaac proved to be the kind of father who played with his children on the floor, who took them riding, who read them stories and taught them to be kind and brave. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac took Eleanor back to the Cottonwood pool. The trees had grown, the creek had shifted slightly, but the place was still peaceful, still theirs. They sat on the same fallen log, now weathered and worn. 10 years, Isaac said, his arm around her. Does it feel like 10 years? Sometimes it feels like forever, Eleanor said. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, but every day I am grateful I chose you. You chose yourself first, Isaac reminded her. I was just lucky enough that you chose me too. Eleanor leaned her head on his shoulder. When my father cast me out, I thought my life was ending. I thought I had lost everything. And instead you found everything, Isaac finished. I found myself, Eleanor corrected. And then I found you. And now we have built this life, this family, this home, all because I refused to be someone I was not. And because I told you that you could refuse me too if you wanted, Isaac added, smiling. Eleanor laughed. Best thing you ever said to me. It meant you understood. You saw me, all of me, and you did not try to change me or control me. You just loved me. I still do, Isaac said. More every day. They kissed as the creek sang beside them and the cottonwood leaves whispered overhead. Two people who had chosen themselves and each other and built a life of their own making. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The children grew. James took over more responsibilities on the ranch, showing a natural leadership that made Isaac proud. The twins, now teenagers, were inseparable and full of plans for their futures. Daniel was quiet and studious, more interested in books than horses, and Eleanor encouraged his love of learning. Little Mary, the baby, had her mother's stubborn streak and her father's warm heart. Grace, Eleanor's youngest sister, finally married at 27, choosing a schoolteacher who respected her intelligence and independence. She and Eleanor remained close and their children grew up together, cousins and friends. Sophie in Sacramento had 3 children of her own and a successful husband, but she made the journey to visit Eleanor at least twice a year, and the sisters' bond, tested by time and distance, remained strong. Mary Lawrence, now in her 60s, was the beloved grandmother to all the children, telling stories and baking cookies and providing wisdom when asked. She told Eleanor once, late one evening when it was just the 2 of them, that watching Eleanor's life had taught her the value of courage, and she wished she had been brave enough to stand up to Albert all those years ago. "But you found your courage eventually," Eleanor said. "That is what matters." In 1895, when Eleanor was 39 and Isaac 42, they sat on the porch of their ranch house watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Their children were all inside, the sounds of their voices and laughter drifting through the open windows. The ranch was thriving, the horses they bred sought after throughout California, their life secure and full. "You ever think about what would have happened if you had said yes to Gerald Pemberton?" Isaac asked. Eleanor shuddered. "Sometimes in nightmares. But then I wake up and you are beside me, and our children are under our roof, and I know I made the right choice." "The town certainly changed their minds about you," Isaac observed. "Now you are a respectable ranch wife, a pillar of the community." "Because I married well and produced children," Eleanor said dryly. "The exact things my father wanted, just not with the man he chose. Does it bother you that they accept you now for doing what they condemned you for refusing?" Eleanor considered. "A little. But mostly I do not care what the town thinks. I care what I think. I care what you think. I care what our children will learn from our example." "And what is that?" "That they have the right to choose their own paths," Eleanor said firmly. "That love should be freely given, not coerced. That courage sometimes looks like saying no, even when the cost is high." Isaac took her hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. "I am proud of you. Every single day I am proud to be your husband." "And I am proud to be your wife," Eleanor said. "You gave me the greatest gift, Isaac. You told me I could refuse you if I wanted. You gave me choice. You gave me freedom. And because of that, I chose you with my whole heart." As the sun set over Cottonwood Creek Ranch, Eleanor Lawrence Ollinger looked at her life and found it good. She had been cast out for refusing to be someone she was not, and in that exile, she had found herself. She had found love that respected her autonomy. She had found partnership that honored her strength. She had found family that she built with her own hands and heart. The girl who had stood alone at the edge of San Andreas 17 years ago, cast out and afraid but unbowed, had become a woman who knew her worth, who had built a legacy of courage and love. Her children would grow up knowing they could choose their own paths. Her daughters would know they did not have to accept marriages they did not want. Her sons would know that true strength came from respecting others' choices. And every day, she woke beside a man who had seen her at her lowest, had offered her respect and love without conditions, and had told her she could refuse him if she wanted. That simple statement, that gift of choice, had changed everything. As darkness fell and stars began to appear, Eleanor and Isaac went inside to their family, their home, their life built on the foundation of mutual respect and freely given love. Behind them, the cottonwood trees by the creek whispered in the evening breeze, keeping the secrets of 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of rejection. The story that had begun with exile and refusal had become a story of choice and love, of courage rewarded and dreams fulfilled. And if anyone had asked Eleanor if she regretted that day her father cast her out, she would have said no. Because that day, terrible as it was, had set her free to become who she was always meant to be. And that freedom had led her to Isaac, to their children, to this life that was wholly, completely, perfectly hers.